there, ghouls and gals, and welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, hi, my name is Hillary, and if you are not new here, I just want to let you guys know how much I appreciate you guys. We're starting a family here on YouTube, and I hope that we just keep growing and we keep growing. So again, I appreciate you. Tonight we are going to be covering not only is an unsolved murders, and also has ghosts in it, so sick, dude. So we're gonna be covering the Villisca axe murders. So I don't really have much else to say other than let's dive right on into it. The Villisca axe murders occurred between the days of June 9th, 1912 and June 10th, 1912 in the town of Villisca, Iowa. There were 6 family members and 2 house guests that were found basically bludgeoned to a pulp. All 8 victims, 6 of which were children, were murdered with an axe. And it was pretty bad. The person hit them continuously until, like, you could not identify who they were. Now, these are the faces of the Moore family. Obviously, the parents are at the top, their 4 children are next, and the 2 girls that were sleeping over are the little girls with bows in their hair. So our story begins with the Moore family, and that is the family that unfortunately was murdered. The father's name was Josiah and the mother's name was Sarah. And they had 4 children named Herman, Mary, Arthur, and Paul. They were an affluent family, and because it was so small back then, everyone knew them. They were well liked with the community, and as far as anyone knew, no one had any grudges as to why they would murder everybody in the house with an axe. On the night that the murders would take place, Mary invited her 2 friends, Ina and Lena Stillinger, to come over for a regular sleepover. So that whole day, the family had gone to church and they did some church activities, and after that, the 2 girls in the family left to go home. The program at the church ended at about 9:30 p.m. and the Moore family got home at about 9:45 to 10 o'clock. So the night goes by, and at about 7 a.m. in the morning, a neighbor of the Moore family noticed something was wrong because the family wasn't out doing their chores. They weren't doing what they usually do in the day, so they called somebody, I think a brother, to come over and check on the family, see if there was anything amiss. After a lot of knocking by the neighbors and a few other people and no one coming to the door, Josiah Moore's brother showed up with a copy of a key to open the door to go inside the house. Upon opening the door, the brother immediately found Ina and Lena's bodies, and they were deceased. So this freaked him out. They got the police. They came back and they did a search, finding that everybody in the house had been murdered and they were killed with their own axe from their house. And the murder weapon was found in the room with Ina and Lena, so he just left it. The doctors at the time had concluded that the Moore family had died from 12 o'clock to 5 in the morning. And when they did a search of the house, they had found that there was cigarettes that had been lit and a couple other things in the attic, which led them to believe that the killer had sat upstairs, waited for everybody in the house to fall asleep before taking the axe from the house and murdering everybody. It's said that the killer or killers came down from the attic and immediately went to Josiah and Mary's room first, and they hit Josiah. He was the victim that had the most swings by the axe. He was hit so violently that his eyes were missing from his skull. So I guess they wanted to incapacitate him first. The blade of the axe was actually, Josiah was the only one that they used the blade of the axe for, and they did it so violently as well that there is still to this day a mark in the ceiling where this killer swung his axe. The rest of the victims were killed with the blunt end of the axe. Which, I don't know how disgusting of a human you have to be to kill someone, let alone children. This makes me sick, and I could understand why this place might be haunted either residually or by this evil dude. Like, who are you? Who do you think you are, man? The killer or killers then made their way down to the children's room where Herman, Mary, Arthur, and Paul were sleeping and bludgeoned them the same way that they had their parents. After killing everybody upstairs, they proceeded downstairs to where the Stillinger sisters were sleeping and then bludgeoned them. Investigators believe that everybody in the house was asleep except for Lena Stillinger, who proved to have some defensive wounds on her. Lena was found laying crosswards on her bed, and she also had a wound on her arm that proved that she could have been fighting back. And like, good for you, Lena. I know it doesn't help, but I hope she got some licks into this dude. Lena's nightgown was also pushed up to above her waist, which led investigators to think that she may have been molested, although I don't think, as far as I'm aware, that she had been, but at the time they thought that she was. Now this is where the story gets a little bit weird, because the killer actually, I don't know if he performed some ritual, but he covered up every mirror in the house with a blanket or a piece of clothing so that he or she didn't have to look at their reflection, and also took a piece of meat from the refrigerator and put it in the middle of a room. I have no idea what kind of ritual this is, what you are doing, but I hope that he couldn't look at his own face after all this nonsense that you've done. It's said that this case was so widely spread around that it actually took the sinking of the Titanic off the front pages of the newspaper. So highly, highly publicized. Now, here are some of the suspects I'm going to go through. I'm probably going to go about 3, even though there were several of them, but I'm going to give you guys the most compelling of the suspects. Our first suspect is Frank F. Jones, who was actually a state senator in Iowa at the time. And here's the photo that I have of Frank F. Jones. Josiah Moore had worked with Frank for many of years at his store before leaving and starting his own business. Josiah reportedly took a lot of business away from Frank, so they think that this is a motive as to why he would come in and, I guess, kill everybody. Also, Josiah was rumored to have been having some affair with Frank's daughter-in-law. However, that's never been supported or proven, so. The next suspect is Reverend George Jacqueline Kelly. This is the face of George Jacqueline Kelly. It's said that Reverend Kelly was unbalanced. He was a traveling minister at the time, and he supposedly actually confessed to these murders, but nobody believed him because he was crazy. So being a traveling minister, he was actually the minister who was participating in the church things that were going on June 9th, and saw the family, the Moore family there, and he was there. He saw them leave, he was with the children, and he was also suspected of being a pedophile. Also, Reverend Kelly and his wife happened to leave on the 10th, the day after when all the bodies were found. He had left town. So that's a little sketch to me. Like, he may be the most compelling one, and out of all 3 of them that I'm going to tell you, I think maybe he done it. But let's get on to the next guy. Our next suspect is Henry Lee Moore. This is a photograph of Henry Lee Moore, who is one of our suspects. And despite the last name, Henry Lee Moore was not related to the Moore family. He is one of the suspected murderers, and after this whole crime happened and everything, he went back home and he killed members of his own family, I believe including his mother and sister, and he used an axe to murder them. And I know I only said I was going to give 3, but I'm going to give 1 more suspected killer just because of an EVP that I found compelling. So our next guy is Andrew or Andy Sawyer. Now, I know we love the Ghost Adventures, but they actually went and they investigated this house, and when they went there, they asked the ghosts who killed them, and an EVP came up saying Andy. And he was a suspected murderer of them, but I don't know. If you believe in EVPs and if they're not just spitting out randomness, I don't know why out of all the names they would have chosen that name. So just because of that, I'm adding him into our list of suspects. With all this evidence, this house is supposed to be very, very active with spirits, whether it is residual from the happy times that this family had there, and then also evilness from the spirit of whoever killed these children. They suspect that the spirit is still there, and that spirit of the killer is intelligent. People will hear banging, footsteps, voices. There's been EMF, voice phenomenon coming through. There is also reportedly a man who used to live there who would sharpen his knives, and he would sit there and sharpen his knives, and his daughters recall one day he sharpened it and got to the end and it looked like something was pushing his hand, to which he turned around and stabbed himself, and no one had an explanation for why that happened. I don't know if it was psychosis or if a spirit was pushing his hand. I think you guys should decide whether or not you think, or what you think it is. Now, this story just, it gets to me. I don't understand how somebody could do that. Just sit in an attic and wait. And my heart goes out to those people. Even though it was so long ago, 100 years ago, it's still an active place. There are still spirits there that could be just in trouble. They're stuck reliving the same thing over and over and over again, and I can't help but just feel bad. Because this is an active case, I hope one day that we will know exactly who did these things, and I know there won't be justice, but at least we will know who did it. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for coming back, and if you guys want to give me a like, subscribe, comment, feel free to do so, and I'll see you guys on my next video. Thanks. Bye.